The board doesn't call it firing. They call it decommissioning, like he's a piece of broken equipment instead of a man. And Dorian Hale sits in the review chair and listens to four people who have never crossed a hostile border, without six bodyguards and a press pool, explain why his judgment can no longer be trusted in the field. Liability class. Director Selwyn Cray reads from the file, not looking up. You breached the Varan compound 11 minutes ahead of sanction timing. You saved 9 hostages. You also violated 4 protocols doing it. And the board does not get to pick which version of that story it tells the press. Field license revoked, effective immediately. Réassignement, surveillance desk, tiers 3. Dorian doesn't argue. Arguing is for people who think the verdict is still being written. He stands, says nothing, and walks past the new field lead in the hallway. Commander Bryce Talon, 31 years old, pressed uniform, the same unit patch Dorian built half his career under, now stitched on a Talon's shoulder like he earned it by waiting. Talon doesn't even bother to look smug. He just looks past Dorian the way you look past furniture on your way out the door. 3 weeks later, Dorian is exactly where they put him, a windowless room, a wall of drone feeds, coffee going cold in a paper cup, when every screen in the room flags red at once. A school trip, a youth soccer tournament across the river checkpoint into the Cassine Delta, 40 kids and 6 chaperones on a charter bus, and somewhere between the second checkpoint and the tournament hotel, that bus stops existing on every tracker the authority owns. 6 hours of silence later, the demand comes through encrypted relay, stamped with a mark every operative in the building recognizes and nobody wants to see. Warlord Andrei Kesh, who has run the Delta's ransom trade for a decade and never once honored a deadline he didn't set himself. The number has too many zeros. The window is 72 hours. No negotiators cross the demarcation line in person. And the chaperone roster that scrolls across the command screen stops every breath in the room when it reaches a name. Ellen Hale, 16, listed as a student chaperone's assistant, because it's his daughter. He's in Cray's office in under 4 minutes. Decommission be damned. You're not field certified. Cray says, like that settles anything. Commander Talon is already drafting terms with the embassy. We do this through channels, Mr. Hale, the way the authority always does it. Kesh doesn't honor channels. I wrote half the file on him personally. Then you understand exactly why we follow protocol. Cray's voice never rises. It never has to. Go home. Talon's press conference runs that evening, lit for cameras, full of phrases like de-escalation and good faith dialogue, language built to sound responsible while buying nothing at all. The official convoy is staged at the demarcation checkpoint by morning, idling, waiting on diplomatic clearance that keeps almost arriving and never quite does. 48 hours left on the clock. 46. 44. Dorian goes home, exactly as told. He packs a bag that has nothing to do with going home, and at 2 in the morning he crosses the river checkpoint on foot, alone, off every list that matters to anyone in that building. What nobody at the authority knows, what nobody has ever known, because Dorian never logged it, never claimed credit, never let it touch a single official file, is that this is not his first time doing exactly this. For 11 years, quietly, off every record that exists, Dorian has gone where sanctioned channels couldn't or wouldn't, into the gaps a slow bureaucracy leaves behind, and brought people out who would have otherwise become a footnote in next year's budget review. 411 times, by his own private count. He never told anyone, because the moment something like that becomes known, it becomes a program, and programs get audited, and audited things get shut down by men like Cray who read files for a living and never cross a checkpoint themselves. So he simply did the work, quietly, alone, and something, somewhere inside him, had apparently been counting every single one. The instant he steps past the checkpoint fence with no support filed, no extraction team standing by, no one coming if it goes wrong, the 412th mark logs itself. Erasure mark 412, threshold reached. Dormant class identified. The hollow, classification, unranked / off the grid. He doesn't feel like a different man. He feels, for the first time in 3 weeks, like himself. The outer perimeter is 12 guards on a rotating 2-hour watch. the kind of number that would normally take a six-man breach team in an hour of planning. Dorian walks through the middle of it like a draft of wind through an open door. Guards glance his direction and their eyes simply slide past, the way attention slides off a name you've already forgotten. And he understands, distantly, clinically, that he isn't sneaking past them at all. They aren't registering him in the first place. By the second checkpoint, the watchtower cameras stop catching him on playback. Not because he's dodging the lenses, but because the footage itself smooths over the gap where he should be, the way still water closes behind a passing hand. Comms chatter on the perimeter channel clips out mid-sentence whenever he moves beneath a relay post and resumes a breath later with nobody on either end noticing the missing half-second. One guard near the inner fence line stops walking, frowns, turns back the way he came, some flicker of instinct catching at the edge of notice. And Dorian goes still in the dark for 4 full seconds, close enough to hear the man breathing, until the guard shakes his head at nothing and keeps walking. This is not luck. This is power with a logic underneath it. 11 years of solo extractions, each one a mark, each mark teaching whatever system had been quietly building inside him exactly how to erase a man from notice, from memory, from the record entirely. He never trained for this. He earned it one unlogged rescue at a time, and the bill is finally being paid in full. The compound itself sits on the Delta's only dry rise for 40 kilometers, an old colonial warehouse, refitted, floodlit, a comms tower bristling with relay dishes that feed straight back to Kesha's buyers. 40 kids and 6 chaperones are somewhere inside it. On a clock that is narrowed to 31 hours, and 80 armed men stand between Dorian and the loading doors. He doesn't need to fight 80 men. He needs 600 seconds. Erasure marks, 412/412. Absolute severance, available. Activate. He activates it walking, no pause, no ceremony, no system fanfare he allows himself to feel. The compound's comms tower goes dark to everyone outside a 400-meter radius. Not destroyed, simply erased, every relay still reporting clean status to a command channel that, for the next 10 minutes, no longer functions the way Kesh thinks it does. Inside that radius, his entire network is alone with one man and has no idea yet. Dorian moves through the warehouse floor like the building's own shadow, and the 80 men become a number that simply stops matching. Not because he cuts through them in some bloody spectacle, but because absolute severance was never built for killing. It was built for a man going somewhere uncontested. Guards posted at doorways turn to report up the chain and find no one left listening. Men finishing patrol loops never register that the door behind them is already open, already cleared, already 3 rooms behind him. By the time he reaches the holding room, 40 kids sitting against a concrete wall under one board guard who's been told nothing is coming. That guard is disarmed and zip-tied to a support beam before he finishes turning his head. Ellen sees him first. She doesn't scream his name. She's smarter than that. And she's his daughter. She just goes very still, the way you go still when something impossible turns out to also be true. Dad, single file, quiet. We've got a window, and it's already running. He says it the way he said it to 411 strangers before her. Calm enough that 39 kids who have never met him simply do exactly what he says, because some part of them recognizes a man who has clearly done this before. He finds Kesh in the upper office 11 minutes later, mid-call to a buyer about ransom logistics that will never happen now, and Kesh doesn't get within a hand's width of the weapon on his desk before his own wrist is pinned flat against it. You're already on a live line, Dorian tells him, and he is patched in the last 90 seconds of the severance window, straight into the authorities' command feed, the same feed currently broadcasting commander talent at the demarcation checkpoint, still negotiating proof-of-life terms with an intermediary for a hostage situation that, on every monitor in the command room, has just visibly and completely ended. 40 kids and 6 chaperones walk out the back gate of the compound at the exact moment Talon's convoy is still being waved through customs at the front checkpoint, 90 minutes from the site, lights flashing for cameras that have nothing left to film. Erasure tally archived. Compound network status restored. Severance window closed. Director Cray watches the feed twice before he says a single word. The first time in total silence, the review board frozen mid-filing into the room behind him. The second time, he says it loud enough for the whole command floor to hear. Give me Hale's actual file. Not the desk reassignment, the real one. Pull everything we have. There isn't much of a real one to pull, which is, in its own quiet way, the entire point of the man. There's 11 years of work done by someone who never once asked to be seen doing it. And now there's a status line at the bottom of a system readout that nobody on the board authorized and nobody knows how to file. Field classification, unranked, off the grid, the hollow. Cray reinstates the license that same afternoon, on the record, in front of the same 4 board members who stripped it 3 weeks earlier, and he doesn't dress the reversal up as anything other than what it plainly is. Talon never gets his camera moment from the rescue, because there's no footage of him doing anything except standing at a checkpoint 90 minutes too late, looking exactly as useful as he turned out to be. Dorian doesn't ask anyone for an apology. He's already walking Ellen to the transport, her hand in his 39 other kids and 6 chaperones boarding a bus behind them that everyone in the command room can now actually track. Somewhere behind him, Cray is still talking, still trying to find the correct form to file a man who was never on any form to begin with. Dorian doesn't look back. He never needed the board to watch him do the job. He only ever needed it done. And for the first time in 11 years, the record finally agrees with him.